In an attempt to make our film fit at least some of the conventions of a typical Hollywood action movie, we decided that our two protagonists would be male, especially seeing as it is a hybrid of crime and action. With our two protagonists dressed very differently, this portrayed the idea of having two people with two completely contrasting identities, yet they fit in with the idea of our chosen genre. Dylan, who is played by Ashley, as you can see here, is a drug user. This highlights the idea of corruption, which is a typical convention of a crime film. Like many typical action or crime films, there is always corruption involved, just like in the film Man on a Ledge, where the idea of corruption is used as a device to drive the main narrative of the film. We have a very action-based opening with a lot of movement where both of our characters are literally racing against time. This may be quite different from most typical Hollywood blockbuster action movies, as most of them usually have very slow openings. Although this is very unlike the movie Skyfall, where the first scene is one of the most action-filled. By picking a genre like action, especially a hybrid of both action and crime, it gave us an opportunity to be creative, as not all films under those genres seem to follow such restrictive conventions. Amongst the many films we had analysed, one movie that had a great influence on our opening was Trainspotting, such as having an upbeat, non-diegetic soundtrack during the chase scene, also having a different range of creative angles and shots. In terms of our editing, we had used a lot of fast-paced cuts, which is also very similar to the ideas used in Trainspotting. All three of our characters are representative of three different social groups. Our first character, Ashley, who plays as Dylan, is one of our secret agents. He's dressed smartly in a full black suit. His costume makes his occupation obvious. He is a successful businessman. In our first shot of the film, you can clearly see Ashley pouring himself a drink. It is unusual for somebody to drink this much alone, as usually people will be going out and drinking with their friends, and this shows that he does not have much of a social life. This represents middle-aged men who feel that their success is more important than their social life. As for Ryan, who plays Connor, he is dressed in ordinary clothes. Although he's a secret agent, he balances his ordinary life with his agent life. The setting he is in is very different from Ashley's. This is to show that he lives in the suburban part of London. The grey, dirty, run-down surroundings portray this idea very well in terms of mise-en-scène. Here, Ryan is representative of an ordinary, easygoing, middle-aged man who enjoys women, partying, and has a lot of free time. Hence the reason he's shown just waking up during midday. This is indicated by the time on the phone during the phone call scene. Connor can be seen as someone who challenges the usual stereotype of an agent, as usually agents are dressed smartly. Connor is not. Our third character is played by me, Alexis Tierra. She is in charge of both agents. She shows how important yet undermined women are. She represents the usual stereotype of groups of women who are seen inferior to men but are still so important. Female inferiority, or at face value, looking like you're insignificant as a woman, is also a very typical convention of a Hollywood blockbuster. But at the same time, this also makes her a countertype because she challenges the idea of women being inferior to men. Her speech is minimal, yet it is the most vital part of our opening as it creates a storyline. Although she's in charge of both of our male characters, only her lips appear in the shot. In comparison to our two other male protagonists, she only appears for a very short time throughout the whole opening. Yet she remains very undermined as a character as she drives the narrative and gives the opening storyline. Although all three characters represent three contrasting social groups, altogether they represent some of the different levels of hierarchy in society. Our elitist, Alexis, our average middle-class man, Dylan, and the proletarian, Connor. Although Alexis is at the highest position of power, she only plays a small but important part of the opening. And Dylan is our protagonist as the camera focuses on him for a larger amount of frames than it does with Connor and Alexis. Collectively, all our characters share one similar trait, a secretive double life. Considering the production companies for our film opening was not a difficult task. We chose to use famous distribution companies, and Alicia decided to make the second ident to make it different. From the research we did on our other film openings, I noticed that many of the movies similar to our own were distributed by Warner Brothers. This was effective for us because we knew that Warner Brothers is ranked one of the most successful and famous distribution companies. Warner Brothers is also known for distributing action films, which is a Hollywood favourite. The second ident, Carlin Productions, was made specifically in relation to our film. We made the ink splatters red so that it matched the urban gangster theme of our movie. Carlin Productions is a small distribution company and it was brought by Warner Brothers, which was great because it helped sell our product. Our group wanted our film opening to be aimed roughly at the same audience as the movies like Step Up, Trainspotting and The Matrix. However, our film would be a little more age-friendly than Matrix as it's rated 15. Therefore, we decided to use a 12 age rating, and for this reason we had chosen Warner Brothers. The target audience for our media product was decided by a variety of different kinds of research. At first, I researched normal target audiences using a variety of different reliable websites. However, we also thought it would be a good idea to expand our research by carrying out a survey. We used SurveyMonkey to carry out our research further and made a survey and sent it to many different people of all ages. Overall, we found out that action mostly appeals to young teenagers 12 and above. This is because there are age limitations in the cinema that restrict certain age groups to watch things that may be considered unsuitable for their viewing. We also discovered that the gaming industry makes action films especially more attractive to the teenage male audience because these games are filled with masculine stereotypes that emphasize power, strength, competition, actions, and sometimes violence, which are primary conventions of action films. Moreover, from research via the internet, we discovered that the more dominant gender who prefer action-crime hybrids are males. However, many females challenge this stereotype, and as some argue that they enjoy action-crime movies, especially if they had subgenres within them that appeal more to females, i.e. romance and comedy. In order to increase the target audience further, we wanted to make our film more appealing to females. We had decided to choose Iman as the third character in our movie. Moreover, as the female had an extremely dominant role within our film, we thought it would be enticing to some female viewers as it had the film noir effect. This alone could appeal to both teenagers of both genders, but males and females of the age range of 25 and above. If we use more successful conventions that would expand our target audience further, it may range the audience to older age groups. In order to construct our ideal opening, we thought a lot about the various ways in which we could attract our audience and also expand our attraction to other audiences by using a certain setting, props and costume. We considered what would appeal to both males and females of all ages. For example, we first considered the idea of using an attractive male to star in our movie because it meant that we would capture a large portion of the female population. We chose to use Chris Pine to play Dylan and Channing Tatum to play Connor. This is because they are definitely well-known attractive actors. However, they also have played in many action and crime movies which are similar to our genre. The bottle of Southern Comfort is an interesting prop we used because it implies that Dylan lives alone and can only turn to alcohol, which allows the audience to empathise with our character early on in the movie. This especially was aimed at the older female audience outside of the targeted age group. As research shows, they prefer movies which they can become a part of the emotional aspect. Also, we use a subgenre of American gangster related back to the video game industry, as it is more relatable to a younger audience. The gaming industry is constantly proliferating, so that would fulfill our goal of having a mass audience along with niches.
From the beginning of constructing this product, we started by researching the certain films that linked with our genre of film. This helped us when making our film as we could get a lot of ideas that could make our opening outstanding. This meant that we could also incorporate ideas from other films so that our film could reach its highest possible potential. Before the process of constructing this product, we barely knew how to use a video camera, and at the beginning of filming, we even had struggles with turning the camera on. This was extremely time-consuming, but with such advanced technology, it is expected to take quite some time. Also, only one of us had used Final Cut Pro before, so when trying to edit, we found it quite difficult. As this editing software was quite hard to get the grasp of, it took us some time to actually figure out how to edit the footage we had. But it was an interesting task to partake in. Even though we were not that good at editing, we were not that worried as we had Alicia, who was excellent at editing, so she saved us and gave us a really excellent touch to our film. Because if it wasn't for her, our opening would have been completely terrible. During the process of constructing our action film, we have learned about the effects of each type of shots, camera movements and angles. We have learnt by using the internet whilst researching and carrying out our film that we need to have a lot of fast-paced scenes so that it fits the typical genre of an action/crime film. If we had slow shots, the audience for our film would lose interest and be confused in our film, if it is an action crime or not. When we used the editing software, we learnt how to add parts of the clips to the timeline in the order we want. However, whilst editing, we realised some of our shots were out of place, and when we would have to rearrange them, otherwise it would disrupt the flow of our opening. So we practiced cutting and speeding up footage to make it fit in with our film, and when filming some footage was too out of place for our film, so this meant that we had to reshoot a big part of my film. But it taught me that you had to get the right shots, because when certain ones don't work out, they can ruin the whole film and make the whole thing look tacky and unprofessional. When we were creating our film, we learned a lot more skills in comparison to the preliminary. From the making of our film, we have learnt that there is a lot more to filmmaking than just filming and adding the shots together. At the beginning of the prelim, we first learnt the 180-degree rule. This was a hard rule to overcome as we were struggling to stick to it because we just did not understand the concept of the necessity of the rule. Secondly, we learnt match on action. This is when a scene has shots filmed at different angles but flows with continuity. Finally, we learnt shot reverse shot, which shows dialogue between two or more characters. Another thing we noticed changed was the mise en scene. For example, instead of filming in the school green room, we filmed in a variety of different areas, which increased the realness of our opening. Also, the costumes and props could expand a lot further than just using and wearing the things we came to school with. Moreover, the simplicity of our prelim was way too far inside our comfort zone. We hardly knew anything about editing and the technology it requires, therefore the mental challenge was quite interesting. The skills we developed whilst filming our opening scene were expanded and a lot further than when we first started filming our prelim. However, despite the simpleness of the prelim, it gave us a rough practice for our movie. To conclude, the preliminary task was the starting point of a long line of progression to the end of the opening.